Welcome back. You're listening to Get Real with Bob and Stacy, and you're joining us for our CEO segment. On the line with us today is Conor Delaney, Chief Executive Officer of Good Life Advisors. Welcome to the show, Conor.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm going to give just a little background on Conor. Conor founded Good Life Advisors in 2012 based on the impetus to promote a financial services culture dedicated to the client and the individual advisors rather than a culture of sales and corporate profits. A former top advisor and manager for Waddell & Reed Financial Advisors, Conor partnered at the firm with co-founder Courtney Neen, both garnering tremendous success. With their subsequent launch of Good Life, Conor is now at the helm of one of the youngest hybrid RIA OSJ companies in the industry and one of the only firms offering advisors full-service office options and ownership in the RIA with a strategic selection of industry veterans to comprise the executive team. He has positioned the organization for spectacular growth. The foundation of his personal and professional life were inspired by his dad's example of the importance of making a positive impact. So, Conor, you tell us a little bit about your story, how you got into financial advising, and what made you build this company.
Awesome, thank you. I wound up getting into this business. I was my quick story, the one that's less boring, is when I was in high school. My father passed away the day after I graduated. He was a school teacher and contracted Legionella from the school he was teaching at, and he passed away actually 13 years ago.
That's
this
terrible.
past weekend. I went to college, the son of two school teachers that didn't have really any financial resources, and frankly made a lot of poor financial decisions. And obviously with my father passing, it didn't get any easier. And after my freshman year of college, my school professor had said, hey, you should look at this as a career when you get out of school. And growing up outside of New York, I didn't really have a great idea or a great feeling about New York and Wall Street and everything like that. But I looked into it, and one of the things I noticed is that you didn't need your college degree. So instead of an internship, I went and got securities license the summer of my freshman year of college, going into my sophomore year, and began practicing as a licensed financial advisor the next spring. Spent 7 years at Waddell & Reed. They laid a great foundation. They were a great organization to be affiliated with. But what I wanted to do as I grew and kind of went up through the rankings was move from that culture of sales into the culture of service, which meant that, if you took care of people and you did the right thing, much like my dad did as a school teacher, but in a totally different industry, then good things will happen. And so we went and we started Good Life. My partner Courtney and I left. We started Good Life in 2012, and since then, in addition to our private practice, we have built infrastructure to support other advisors that are like-minded in that idea of wanting to leave the big corporate culture and focus more on their community first. So that's more or less the short version of where we started to where we are today, and happy to continue to grow the firm, and we're experienced tremendous growth. We probably will grow around 65 or 70% this year from a firm with organic assets and organic advisors joining us, and hopefully going to double the footprint of the offices around the United States at some point over the next 12 to 15 months.
That's pretty cool. And it looks like you have kind of a mix, a lot of veterans who've been in the business, and then do you bring in newer people too to learn off the veterans?
Sure. So that's one of the things that's actually become very hard in the business. The good news for some of the younger folks, I just turned 30 myself in the fall. The good news for us is that there's nobody behind us.
Mm-hmm.
So the competitive advantage that we have being in the industry with a testing environment that's gotten incredibly hard from a security standpoint to even get licensed, plus the success in general with firms not having training programs for new advisors and stuff like that. There are not a lot of kids getting out of school with the opportunity to get into this business. The bad news for us is that that's a lot of work, right? We're going through the biggest wealth transfer in the history of our country right now. And as advisors, many of them are baby boomers start to also look at their retirement, the pressure's really on to say, okay, what's behind this? Where are the 30s and 40-year-old people and 20-year-old people that we can groom to become those next leaders? We've had great leaders that have helped lay a lot of infrastructure and foundations to how we're providing financial services around the United States. And now it's like, hey, how do we do this in a culture where most large firms have shut down their new advisor training programs? How do we get kids to grow up in this business? So internally, we are actually have 3 guys that are just graduating college, did a year of an internship with us, that are now in the process of getting licensed at our different offices around the country. And we have spent a lot of time in our different corporate meetings thinking about how we can grow some of these programs that we're trying to roll out to encourage advisors to come in. The problem is that there's really no farm system. There's not a single A team anymore that we can start them off with and then grow to eventually come to the major leagues, right? So that's a big struggle that we're spending a considerable amount of time. And I would imagine we'll probably spend a significant investment into building that training program so that advisors will have a place that they can, or college graduates and such will have a place where they can go and build their career.
Seems like a lot of different industries, well, pretty much anything connected to finance in any way is having very much the same problem that you are. There's really no farm team, like you said. It's all, there's nothing else out there. And hiring people straight out of college with no experience.
I've learned this a lot here over the last 5 years of running Good Life. Unfortunately, everything now comes in most industries and most companies comes down to our profits and losses, right? So especially for companies that are publicly traded. So if I'm, Merrill Lynch, do I spend time, money, tremendous amount of resources building a training program for 10 kids to get licensed, where historically 9 of those 10 kids will fail? And I'll spend hundreds of thousands of dollars doing that at offices around the country for Merrill Lynch? Or do I invest that money in business development and just hope that I can procure somebody that's already established with an existing revenue stream from Morgan Stanley to join Merrill Lynch? So everybody has pivoted away from those training programs and have started to invest their money in taking the advisors from the different broker-dealers to their firms as their way to experience growth instead of investing in those young training programs.
And I think that's another thing we've seen in many industries connected, again, to finance in any way, is that everybody's making that decision. The problem is now the average age of the people in those industries is getting really high. I mean, I think in mortgages, for instance, I think we're in the late 50s now for the average age of a producer in our business, and that just, it's not sustainable. I don't think people are planning to.
I mean, if you look at the average life of a financial advisor historically, I believe, is about 25 years. So you figure somebody gets in and maybe they start their career at 23 or 24. Well, that would put them out of the business at somewhere around 50 because they've done well and they've made good financial decisions, and frankly, they might be burned out after 25 years of service in a sales culture. So when you look now, the average advisor is 56.
Wow.
But historically, the average advisor retires at 50. We got a problem.
Yeah, you got a big problem.
That is interesting. It's the same in real estate. I'll say just in building my company, typically we don't take brand new agents. So like our training programs are built for an agent that already has a high level of success. And literally every agent we bring on, we take from another company because it's the same thing. Why go out and have a licensing school to bring on new real estate agents when like 9 out of 10 are not going to make it? Just
right, but I think we're if somebody would take the time to maybe spend a little bit of time and money on this, and what winds up happening is you follow trends. It's the person that goes against the trend that really makes the money.
Yeah.
So we've seen now everybody cancel these new training programs. Well, we understand the tidal wave's about to crest, where folks are going to be getting out of the business and there's nobody to get in behind them. If there's a way to build that business model so that you can bring in some of those younger folks, it's costly now, but could it pay off later on? I mean, right now I have a guy in the office here that's in today doing a tour, seeing if he's interested. Brand new brand new guy. It's going to be a tremendous amount of time of my part, which I did spend a lot of time teaching people the business when I was at my last firm, partially serving as a manager. But I think that the benefit would be now I have somebody in this home office here outside of Philadelphia that can help be that next generation when some of my older advisors here start to hang them up. It's just committing to them and making that investment in them. That's going to be the discipline that we're going to have as a firm.
Interesting. So do you have any financial planning advice for our listeners?
Well, I think that there's the trend that we're seeing from a consumer standpoint is that people are very much getting into, you hear the term robo-advisor. And I've spent a lot of time looking at this robo-advisor thing. First of all, I think it's great that the average consumer post-2008 is spending a lot more time getting information and getting caught up to speed as best they can on what's happening inside of their investment accounts. The problem is, a lot of times my wife is notorious for this. She'll have something wrong with her knee. Her knee will be sore, and she'll go to, because we do a lot of running and stuff like that, she'll go to WebMD. And before you know it, it's like, well, she might have cancer in her kneecap.
Yeah, right.
So the problem is getting the right information.
Right.
And now as we move into a world where people want to automate a lot of things in order to bring down the fees that are associated with their respective investment accounts, I think what the concern and what we need to make sure that we're doing as consumers is saying, great, robo-advisor is an awesome solution, for example, for somebody that wants to sort of set it and forget it and doesn't necessarily care about the implications. But what we can't replace in that is the human relationship, the human touch. The phone calls that I got this morning based on what happened over in Europe last night with folks saying, hey, Conor, are we going to be okay? Having that voice, you can't ask a robot that, right? I've tried. I've tried Siri on my Apple phone to ask questions to, and she gives me the wrong answer most of the time. You have to be able to speak to somebody that is going to answer the phone, and they're not going to be hiding in times of uncertainty, right? So there's that dependability factor. And somebody that's going to be able to calm me down because they're just like me. They're a human. They have a pulse, and they're just as invested in my success as I am. And I think that's the piece of advice that I would give to folks is make sure that, if this is a meaningful thing to you, let's not just rely on internet advice. Let's not just rely on what the computer says. Let's also make sure we're investing in a personal relationship with somebody that you know, like, and trust, that when you pick up the phone, or they're going to answer.
Right. That's awesome.
Good way to look at it.
So I know this is kind of off the cuff, but we noticed that you're a NCAA athlete. How much has that played into your success? Like just athletics and sports.
Oh, a tremendous amount. My partner, I was very fortunate. My partner, Courtney Nine, she played Division I field hockey up at Syracuse, and I had the privilege of playing ice hockey for my college, Alvernia University over in Reading. And I would say it's a tremendous amount of correlation there, because I've always said to Courtney, when we were young, keep in mind, when I got into this business, I could not even take a client out to happy hour because I couldn't sit at the bar because I wasn't 21. I was shaving once a week. I mean, I was very, very young. And so what I would say to the client is, I may not have the track history that this person does, but I'm always going to outwork them. And I think that you develop that work ethic in the gym, on the basketball court, on the ice hockey rink, you know, and that's something that nobody can take away from us, is our experience as athletes. Number one, the competition, but two, in order to compete, and win, we needed to work hard. And so where I lacked growing up in industry knowledge, because my parents were teachers and I'm the first person in my family in financial services, I made up by just saying I'll be the first person in the gym and the last person to leave, the first person into the office and the last person to leave. If somebody else is going to do 10 reps on, I'll do 20.
That's awesome.
Whatever we have to do in order to be successful. So I think that sports plays a lot into it. I also think, some of the stuff that I did when I was recruiting younger advisors, believe it or not, I would find the most successful people oftentimes in restaurants, waiters, waitresses, bartenders, those type of things, because what they understand is that the harder they work and the smarter they work, and the better customer service that they give to folks and things like that, the more money that they could potentially make. And our industry is really no different. If you're looking at it purely from a professional standpoint, what are we in the business of doing? We're managing relationships, and obviously we're trying to generate a profit both for the client and also for ourselves as private practitioners.
Right.
And the correlation is very similar to both athletes as well as some of those hard-working, blue-collar people that are out there, doing in their respective jobs and fields.
Excellent. Now,
Absolutely.
Conor, we're just about out of time. Can you leave us with one of your best finance tips for the audience?
Sure. I think everything goes back to strategy. There's a lot of times we're sitting there saying, okay, the plane is taking off, but where's the plane going to land, right? So I think that the most important thing that we can do is not necessarily chase returns or to say, hey, the market is doing this or the market is doing that. The most important thing that I would do is sit down and try to develop a strategy, both short-term and long-term, for where I'm trying to go. And then from there, you can make your alterations. My dad, as a school teacher, would do quarterly lesson plans, and if he was ahead of the lesson plan, he knew he could pull back his foot off the gas a little bit. If he was behind on the lesson plan, he knew he had to hit the accelerator and get caught up, or else the parent-teacher conferences, he would be playing from behind.
Great.
It's very similar with your life cycle as an investor. You have to be able to say, am I ahead of where I need to go, and I don't need to then take on as much risk, or am I behind, and maybe I need to put in a little bit more or be willing to tolerate a little bit more. So everything goes to planning and goes to strategy, and I think if you do that, you're going to be far ahead of where you might be with that one.
That's awesome. Great job on the show, Conor. We loved having you. That's going to do it for this segment. We got to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with more Get Real after this.